Happy Monday, everybody, and happy Canada Day to all of our viewers out there. Welcome into the TDR Trade of Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dale. Saw the market go into the red this afternoon. I think a lot of people are wondering what this announcement relating to the federal court throwing out a lawsuit here today. And actually, it's a big win for the industry. So we have some great minds here this afternoon to break down on what this announcement means and why it's being viewed as a big win. So come on in. We'll explain, walk you through what this all means and how it affects the industry moving forward as we talk in depth here today and bring in TDR co-host Anthony Varrell. Happy Monday. Good to see you. How are things?
How's it going? Good. It's been a busy couple of days. A lot of headlines that need interpreting.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people aren't sure really what to think of, kind of knives that cut both ways. So, I mean, yeah, it's been a lot of reading and a lot of catching up on stuff and how it relates to everything that's going on with what we're doing.
I know some of this information, you got to read it once, twice, then three times to really understand it because it's a lot of legal language. And I think a lot of people that are actually, just investors in the space want to know what this means. So what do we do here at TDR? We reach out to our network and bring on some great thought leaders. And speaking of thought leaders, let's bring on the CEO of New Lake Capital, which trades on the OTC under the ticker symbol NLCP, Anthony Cogniglio. I know you're not Canada, but happy Canada Day. Or Canadian, I should say.
Happy Canada Day to you because you are in Canada.
Exactly. The only Canadian working here today. But good to see you. Happy Monday. We're going to have Dan Ahrens coming up here in just a moment. We did have him in the background. I think he fell off, but we'll have him on in a second. But I'm sure you heard the news here this afternoon, and I'll jump into it right now. And it broke out probably a little over an hour ago. It was first reported by Marijuana Moment involving the federal court who dismissed a lawsuit from major marijuana companies that sought to block the government from enforcing prohibition against their in-state activities. So according to Judge Mark G. Mastroianni, hopefully I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, he was an appointee as well from the Obama administration. He granted the Justice Department's motion to dismiss this case, and in return, it looks to be a win for this industry, a lot of MSOs, and like I said, the overall industry. So either one of you, and maybe AV as in Victor, I'll start with you. Based on a lot of this evidence, it looked like from these plaintiffs, it was inconsistent. So let's drum it down a little bit. What's your takeaway? Is this a win for the industry? And if so, why?
So I think it's a confusing top line headline. As if you read it at first, your knee jerk reaction is, oh, well, this might've been a waste of time and foregone effort, waste of money, time, effort, etc. I've talked to Jason, talked to Brady, seen what a lot of the other people associated with the lawsuit have been conveying, and they're seeing it as this is a net positive. This accelerates it getting towards a higher court, which I'm assuming will either be an appellate and or Supreme Court, which is what they're working towards. And this also validates any of the claims that the alleged plaintiff has by throwing this out. The judge also had said that this does imply that as cannabis relates to the CSA, it needs further re-examining on a go-forward basis post this lawsuit. So yes, I mean, if you want to be grass is greener, this was a positive headline for the industry and a positive catalyst, I guess, for the overall suit that's being brought forth by the plaintiffs.
Anthony, how do you view it?
Yeah, much the same. The 2 points that I would add here is if you go back to when this lawsuit was first filed last year, many of the folks that brought the suit explained that it was designed to get to the Supreme Court. It was actually designed to fail at some point along the way so that it could make its way through the appellate process and ultimately get to the Supreme Court. And the reason that's important is because the precedent that exists around regulating interstate cannabis, there's a court case from almost 2 decades ago called Raich that is the precedent. And so in order to overturn that precedent, this case needs to get to the Supreme Court. And so, yes, it was designed from the beginning. The other point that I would make is, so let me finish that thought, which is if it was designed to fail, well, it did what it was designed to. They wanted it to fail at some point to get to the Supreme Court. The other important piece, as I'm listening to and talking to folks that are in the legal realm and more knowledgeable about the case, is this concept of standing. And so a real obstacle for the plaintiffs here would have been if the judge would have said that they have no standing, meaning they have no basis to actually bring this suit. But actually, the judge in the ruling, as I've read it, states that he does believe that they do indeed have standing. And so that's important. Now, the DOJ could certainly try to fight that as they move through the appeal process, but I think that was an important win for the plaintiffs. And again, not a legal scholar here, but based on what I've heard and what I've been talking to folks about today, that's a key point here.
Yeah. Well, also want to bring in another thought leader. Let's welcome in off the top here tonight, MSO Mondays. It's Dan Ahrens from Advisor Shares. Good to see you. Happy Monday, sir.
Hey guys, happy Monday. Well, it's not a very happy Monday. It kind of turned ugly in the afternoon, but
yeah, what's the message that you want to get through to maybe investors, like based off of this announcement? I'm sure you've heard some of the feedback that both Anthony's basically presented. This looks like it is a win, but what do you think that maybe some investors may not be understanding if it's correlating obviously through this announcement that occurred about 90 minutes ago?
Well, let's remember we're talking about U.S. cannabis stocks still traded OTC. They're overly affected by outside news.
Yeah.
I mean, good God, look at the bloodbath we had on Friday, and that was following the ugly debate. That shouldn't have really been a negative if you really know what's going on. Some IRS news that is really no big deal. And then today, yeah, I think the afternoon sell-off, the afternoon swoon in these U.S. company cannabis stocks may have been the headlines about that lawsuit. And hey, I've talked to Jason Wild about this a lot. We're of course good friends with the Paxias. Emily and Morgan are involved in it. Talked to Ricky Sandler about it. Those folks are all very involved. And yes, as Anthony said, they absolutely wanted this case to move up to higher courts, which means it getting dismissed in a court like this. So no, it's all moving along to plan. And if you read some of the notes that came along with the dismissal, there's a lot of good positive things acknowledging that, yes, that cannabis needs to be looked at. Again, is the simplest way of saying it.
I think
so. Is this a negative? No, it's a positive. It's according to plan. But in my little theory, personally, after Friday's sell-off, we were pretty green most of the day. And it really corresponded with those headlines coming out mid-afternoon that caused sell-off. So I think that's what caused it. And unfortunately, it's dumb.
Well, I will say it to your positive side, though, and AV is in Victor. Anthony, federal courts did outline that current cannabis laws need to be re-examined, which is, like Dan's point, is a good thing. So what do you think happens next here? You guys, any feedback? Anthony, I'll start with you.
I have no idea. I have no idea as far as next steps go. I'm assuming you're going to hear that from either the Paxias, Boy Schiller, or any of the other plaintiffs that are involved. But as far as next steps, your guess is as good as mine. Yeah.
You guys ever care to comment? Like, this is, like I said, a big win. Like when we talk about cannabis being reexamined, I'm sure there's a lot of talk or a lot of, do you think the rescheduling news and what's pertained over the last couple of months has had some sort of influence on what was determined here, Anthony?
I don't think so. I think the judge listened to this on its merits. I don't think that it was, I think this is a legal analysis that the judge undertook. And in my reading of the ruling, it was very rooted in that legal analysis. There was commentary about the rescheduling, but in my read of it, again, a novice view, it appears to be more incidental as opposed to driving this. And in terms of next steps, to me, it seems obvious, again, not a legal scholar here, but since this was designed to fail and to get up the court system, the obvious next step would be an appeal. And so I would expect that the plaintiffs here were ready for this, and they'll seek to modify the appeal process that I'm sure they've started already through what they heard today, finalize that and get that on file as soon as reasonably possible.
Yeah. Makes sense. That's for sure. All right. Well, we'll see what happens and develop it. More importantly, the big takeaway here is that if investors are watching this and seeing a little bit of a downturn, just understanding what this announcement means, and actually this is a good thing for the industry as to how this is thrown out. So we will watch closely and see what happens as far as next steps. All right. Let's now move to our next topic and shift the news regarding the IRS. Where news broke out late last Friday, reminding cannabis companies that they are still unable to claim normal business deductions and that marijuana is still listed as having a high potential for abuse and no real medical purpose under this current Controlled Substance Acts. Therefore, legal cannabis companies that sell cannabis cannot take a range of routine federal tax breaks. Gents, sounds like the IRS wants their money as these last few months head towards rescheduling. Dan, I see a big smirk on your face, but what do you think is going on? Are you hearing about certain legal companies that are doing these tax deductions? Like, why is the IRS making this announcement now?
Because they're the IRS. They're a three-letter government agency.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna give everybody a little reminder that we only file income taxes once a year, whether it's a corporate, whether it's individual, whatever.
Yeah.
So once again, people, don't over panic, don't over analyze. It's if you think the rescheduling is still coming along, which it is, it's 99% surely happening in my mind. We've never heard anything real to the opposite, anything valid to the opposite.
Yep.
So who the hell cares what some bureaucrat IRS paper pushers seem to think? It's going to be sorted out very soon. So again, no big deal. Bad headline. I don't think people are going to be paying 280E taxes next year. Is it a gray area right now? Yeah, but it's going to get sorted.
How do you see this, like Anthony Varrell, like where do you see like the IRS coming into this when it comes to 280E? Like, will this be prorated in one calendar year? Like what's, I know we're not all accountants here, but at the end of the day, it's just like, maybe this question for all of you guys, but like what happens if rescheduling does happen? Does 280E go away the right way? Like, how do you guys kind of see this being all structured?
So I wish I had the answer to that, but I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. That's in the sector right now. I mean, I think the only thing that we can imply is that 280 goes out the window the day that Schedule 3 is concrete. Aside from that, it's going to be guidance from the IRS, whether it's going to be retroactive, let's say a trailing 12 of that calendar year that it takes place, whether it's 24 and 25, they can get exotic and bookend it. They can also go to all the cannabis companies with their handout and be like, guys, you owe us money for X, Y, and Z. Rescheduling happened now. 280 goes away. You're going to owe us whatever was behind. You're going to pay whatever on. You're going to be absolved of whatever of that liability on a go forward basis, and we're going to take it from there. I don't believe anybody that says they know what's going to happen. We know what has happened. Trulieve got that mega refund. Some cannabis companies are siloing it on their balance sheets and not paying 280E. Other companies are straight up paying 280E. And going about their business and still making money. So it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but I firmly believe that it's simply just opinion as per what's going to happen right now, with the exception of 280E going away if and when rescheduling is concrete.
So, Anthony, let me tweak that question. Is Anthony Cogniglio, as far as like, what do you think is going to happen? What would you like to see happen? And what do you think is the most realistic option you think could be presented once the IRS does review a lot of this stuff? Like, what are scenarios you think that they will look at when, addressing 280E?
Yeah, first off, let's just say what they announced is on Friday really is, it's not announced, but press release they put out should be a surprise to nobody. In fact, we have had this conversation on this show before about the ability to avoid prior year taxes. It was inconsistent with other precedent out there. Again, I'm no tax expert, but just basically reading the rules and applying to what we've seen in other industries. We never expected, at least at New Lake, we never expected that people were going to be able to get found money, so to speak. In terms of your question and what we would like to see going forward, to me, it's clarity. I think having the IRS come out and say exactly what they're going to do will be really important for investors because it'll allow them to calculate what the liability will be. And I think what they're likely to do is they're likely to figure out what is the easiest from an implementation perspective, what's fair and what's legal within the context of the law. And so if a rescheduling happens, let's just make up a date. Let's just say the final rule is filed on November 11th. Just make up a date. Is it reasonable from an implementation perspective to do it from November 11th and use that as a demarcation date? Or is it reasonable to have it effective from January 1st for the entire taxable year? There's going to be some interpretation. I'm not going to predict what they'll do. I would hope, though, your question was, what do I hope? I would hope they would say, let's make it effective for the entire calendar year, because it would be really easy for the companies to calculate their liability. It would be really easy for the investors to assess the appropriate amount of liability that's on their balance sheet. And so do I think they delay it till implement for next year? Probably not, because they lose out or they could be subject to criticism for overtaxing for that stub period. So my best guess would be they'll say that it's on anything for the taxable year beginning January 1, 2024.
Don't you would agree with that, Dan, from what you're seeing, hearing, conversations that you had, but do you think that's something that seems realistic?
I think it sounds realistic, but once again, caveat, no tax expert here.
Right.
And you do have other guests we could have on, and I think we're going to get some more. This news just came out from the IRS on Friday. I haven't heard anything strong opinions one way or the other, except whatever IRS. So now let's wait on real experts to weigh in, and I don't see it as a game changer unless somebody can tell me something different about Schedule 3 not happening. And
I mean, the fact of the matter of it is, it wasn't even a headline. We as an industry, not we as in the people, everyone on this podcast, but the industry made it a headline. All it was the IRS basically saying, guys, you pay $280 now. Don't forget you still pay it. They didn't say anything's changed. They didn't say, hey, we need our money or anything like that. It was just a blanket statement, and it just caught on everywhere, as everybody kind of just implied that the IRS was coming for everyone's money.
Yeah.
Well, let me jump in on that, because there was this growing chorus over the last couple of months of folks who believed that they were going to be able to get money back from the IRS and retroactively apply the rescheduling to prior years, and that there was going to be some way to avoid prior year taxes. I never really saw the basis for that. Again, not a tax expert, as Dan has said, but based on the readings and talk to people, never really understood that. So I think what it did do for anybody that thought that there was a chance that you could recapture previous taxes paid and utilize that to deploy into CapEx, or to maybe buy back shares, or to do what not with it, pay down debt, put it on the balance sheet, that definitively now was out the window, and you could no longer rely on that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point.
You know what I think? I think there's just not a lot going on in investors right now, and we're just looking at some of these titles, and it's a lot of bullshit that's going on right now. We just got to be patient. I think that's what the reality is. But the reality is that these are the summer doldrums, I guess. And tell me you're a cannabis investor in the summer months without telling me you're a cannabis investor in the summer months. And this is the type of stuff I think that gets circulated around. But one thing I'll bring up too, is it official any day now? Ohio, you guys watching this closely, this is going to be big for the industry. We talk about growth states, and we did have a few conversations on last week as well, just with regards to how this might have some sort of influence on what's transpiring and developing as some of the recent news in Pennsylvania. Do you believe a lot of that narrative, Anthony?
The narrative that Ohio is going to influence PA? Yeah. Go ahead, AC. You're both those states.
No, I wasn't sure. Yeah, you abandoned the AVAC thing, Shad. What are we doing here? So I'll start. Yeah, AC. So I'll start. What we've heard out of people that operate in the state, and a lot of this has been reported, is that the state regulators have identified roughly 62, it was over 60, I believe it was 62 licensees that would be approved to start. Now they have to go and get, in essence, what are COs, or the approval that they have everything in place. They're tentatively approved. How long that process takes for the state to get to them and approve it, we don't know. But again, I put this in the bucket of Ohio has moved pretty darn fast here. I think anybody thinking adult use sales would start in July, if you go back to November, December, we would have said, wow, July would be fantastic. So again, patience, it's occurring. It's just a matter of weeks. Let the process unfold, and it'll be a really good market.
Yeah. Dan, what do you think happens with regards to Pennsylvania between now and the end of the calendar year? Do you think we get some movement?
Yep. I think it's coming for sure. There's been so much work in Pennsylvania. Yeah, it's coming. And as discussed, Ohio pressures them a little bit. Because they're going to have the border business going to Ohio. Ohio has to start by September 7th. There's no reason to think it's not coming along quicker than that. It seems like it is. But as Anthony just said, just have a little bit of patience, people. It is. Yeah. It's not going to be in New York. It's not going to be any curveballs happening here. It's 100% coming, and it has to start by September 7th. The law says, and I have a lot of confidence. When you talk to some of the MSOs that are really heavy in Pennsylvania and in the know in Pennsylvania politics, and the guys at Jushi are a great example of that. They are very connected in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's coming.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing from a couple other sources.
I want to zoom out 40,000 feet. We've talked about this a few times in the last couple of weeks, but you guys have all been in this space for quite some time. And we know historically Q4 is always a big time of year for this space. When we look at everything that's at stake going into this federal election and a lot of these growth states pending and stuff like that, you guys view this as perhaps the biggest Q4 ever in this industry, or is that a stretch with all this stuff that's basically pending right now? I want to build.
Don't say stuff like that, Shad. Shush.
Yeah, we can't get that sensational. You're crazy.
Look, I'm a media guy and I got to bring it up, but when you start to put these stuff on paper, it's just like the reality is like we could be conservative, but conservative doesn't bring headlines, and we need to have some information.
It'll be the Flint, Michigan Mega Bowl of cannabis headlines. Come July. If you get the reference, then you're gonna laugh. Yes, I mean, I think we end the year. Florida passes. PA is coming online. Ohio's cranking. And we get a final proposed rule. Not a final proposed rule, final ruling in the rescheduling process.
So if
I don't want to get sensationalistic or anything, but yes, if you just look at pros and cons, look at all the catalysts, and exactly what Anthony just said. We got the rescheduling. Are we confident it's coming? Yeah. We got Florida. It's not really easy, but is it odds on? I think it's odds on we're going to get Florida. Ohio's coming online. It's a big state, and it seems like Pennsylvania. That's all the catalysts I need to be happy. And then you talk to somebody like Don Murphy, he thinks we're going to throw in safe banking for the end of the year. So what the hell? Let's have a party.
Yeah, that would be icing on the cake. That'd be fantastic.
While I'm optimistic on all this stuff, I'll play your game, Shad. No, it's not going to be the all-time most, because just go back to 4 years ago, 2020, and look at what happened after Biden won. Everybody and their mother thought that he was going to sign into law that cannabis would be legalized, and equities ran like crazy. Even if we run the table with everything that was just talked about, I don't see us running the table at all anywhere like that. I think this industry is done with that level of euphoria until there actually is literally a federal legalization, which is far out. So I am hopeful, and I am cheering that we get all those catalysts, but it's going to be nothing like 2020.
I wonder, I know there's a lot of questions, and let's incremental. Let's get one step, ahead of us as far as rescheduling. But when it does come to descheduling, do we see that one day? Rescheduling obviously is the first step. But once that's behind us, how much of a timeline is this? Years in the making? Do you guys think, as far as that actually the conversation being pushed forward and that becoming closer? And I'll go with you first, AC.
Yeah, I'm the negative Nelly when it comes to this, and my view is unpopular. I think it takes a fair bit of time. I think it's going to take a lot of research and a lot of normalization before we actually get descheduling. I hope I'm wrong, but I think we're probably 5 to 7 years out.
You think that long? Wow. And I was
going to say 2030.
5 to 7 years, huh?
We're pretty much same page. It's not happening. I firmly believe it's not happening anytime soon.
Yeah. Dan's back. They think 5 to 7 years.
I'll take the middle. I'll say halfway between what Anthony said and Anthony said. But I'll be thrilled if it happened in my lifetime, Chad. In my lifetime.
Excuse me.
over 25,000 comments now, as far as the comment period towards rescheduling, with a lot of those being positive comments, which is definitely a encouraging sign for the space and how it's being viewed. But before I let you guys all run, I do have to ask, like, what were your thoughts? Obviously, I don't want to get too political here today. We did talk a lot about with Don Murphy on Friday, but Dan, what's your thoughts? Like, as far as just the feedback, yes, there was a sell-off on Friday, but the way it looks right now, it looks like Trump is basically going to be reelected with a lot of the feedback on that debate from last Thursday night. How do you view it as far as the election and, the debate that went on last Thursday? And most importantly, overall, what do you think this means, I guess, with the Trump administration towards this industry?
Oh, it's super interesting. And the sell-off on Friday shouldn't have happened because they were this close to being able to say the word cannabis when the questions about fentanyl and the border came up. Trump said Trump was invoking Ronald Reagan talking an awful lot about states' rights and deferring to states. He could have really easily said one sentence, and he says, "I believe the same thing for cannabis." But
we were close,
and we saw a big old sell-off. So my takeaways are I just find everything intriguing. I saw one poll that thought 33% of the population thought Biden won the debate. I mean, did they watch TV? Did anybody actually watch the debate that saw that? And then there's the additional polls that have come out since then of, different ages, different ethnic groups, different economic statuses. And Biden still has a lot of support. I mean, he could be a mannequin. He could be a corpse, and he'd still have a lot of support. And those things are really interesting to me. And I also saw some numbers for here's the number of voters in 2020. Here's the number of people that watched the debate. An awful lot of voters did not watch the debate and don't care and are going to vote one way or the other, no matter what happens. So that's all intriguing stuff. I do think Trump has a sizable lead now, and anybody that thinks that's negative for cannabis should not think that, because he is a big supporter of states' rights. And I think we've heard that he'll support banking as well, but he'll definitely support states' rights, and he has no interest in moving things backwards when it comes to an issue like that for him, which is not a hot button main issue. He seems supportive.
And he's got a 6 handicap, or at least Biden said that. AC, what's your handicap, my friend?
My handicap is I play golf. That's my handicap. So listen, my read, apart from that debate being abysmal for the American people in general, is that there's still 4 months left to the election. And that's a tremendous amount of time in a political cycle, especially in a media focused cycle. And so without getting political, I think the Biden campaign, if he's not replaced by the convention, they have the opportunity to try to find ways to reposition him. And I agree with Dan, there's a segment of the population that's going to vote for him no matter what. And so we'll see as we get closer. In terms of what does this all mean for cannabis, quite frankly, I look more at what's happening in the Senate. And will the Republicans recapture the Senate? Will the Republicans hold Congress? Because that's where the action is for us. I think if legislation related to cannabis gets to the desk of either candidate, it gets signed. And so if we want anything done, it's really about what's happening at the Senate or the congressional level. And then one other comment about all this news cycle and how it's impacting stocks per se. Let's go back to something we talked about a few months ago on this show, where we talked about investors and traders. I think if you're an investor and you're focused on this sector and you believe in some of these fundamentals that we've talked about and have conviction around them, this stuff is noise. This is volatility. This is the up and down between point A and point B. If you're a trader, you should be excited about the volatility that this creates if you're playing it correctly. So, for those of us that are long-term investors, it's really hard, but, tune out the noise and focus on those long-term catalysts, such as a Schedule 3.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it on Friday. I think one thing that we got to watch at too, AV, is the fact of Mr. Mitch McConnell, who plans to retire. And as Don said, to give something or to get something, you got to give something a little bit too. And I think that is a telling curveball that is going to be interesting come lame duck session time pertaining to SAFE.
Yeah.
But that was interesting based on what Don shared with us on Friday, didn't you think?
Yeah, I mean, SAFE. Here we are talking about SAFE again. SAFE, I think it's interesting. I mean, if Don says it's got momentum going into lame duck, and I mean, who I had spoken to a couple weeks back, it's given guidance that it would probably get done during lame duck. If it gets done, amazing. I would love for SAFE banking to get it done.
Yeah.
Am I holding my breath? And is that one of the catalysts that I'm talking about going into Q4? It's number 5 on the list, and it's probably the least likely to happen out of the whole cohort. Out of the whole cohort. What it was actually good to see was Delaware in their expanded medical and in their recreational bill that they're passing. They actually put banking safe harbor language for banks that transact within the state in that bill, which was good to see. Giving the financial institutions cover on a state level, which I'll take in the meantime.
Yeah. Well, I think to your point, AC, is the fact of traders and investors. We look at this space right now, and there's been a lot of stories, I think, recently posted the last week that pertaining to rescheduling is you shouldn't be looking at companies that are dependent on whether it's safe, whether this state is like, adult use or medicinal. The fact is you really got to pick at a lot of companies right now that are built to withstand regardless of what happens through Washington in the long term. And I know, Dan, this is probably the sentiment that you've indicated and the reason why you go with your strategy the way you do. But yeah, I think we continue to reiterate this and want to obviously communicate this to our viewers. By the way, anybody has any questions for any of us here today, feel free to drop some questions in the comments below. But I assume that you would obviously agree with that sentiment. Dan.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. That's why our fund is very, very top heavy. More, and I say again, you look at a regular mutual fund, you look at an ETF and how it's diversified, and our fund is as top as heavy as you can get, and it's top 5 holdings, top 10 holdings.
Yeah.
And there's some stuff at the bottom that might have a little more torque, might have a little more upside. But are they blue chippy at all? No. Are they tier 1s? No, they're tier 3s that might have some more torque. But our fund is super heavyweight. And, the most blue chippy of all the cannabis MSOs, in many people's opinions, GTI. And, it was down more than 3%. So that kind of hurt today's, closing price. But I'm really suspicious of the headlines about the lawsuit being completely misunderstood that are everything today.
Yeah.
I'd also look forward, and we've had a patch here of news that some people are perceiving as negative. We haven't even gotten into the hearings around expected hearings. We don't know that the DEA is definitely going to grant. I do believe that there'll be at least 1 or 2 of them will be granted a hearing. Once we get into the hearings, that's going to create a lot of narrative. It's going to create a lot of noise. And anybody that wants to be negative on the sector will be able to look at those hearings and pull out a lot of negative sentiment from it. And then we're going to be left for a number of months speculating on how that impacts the final outcome. So, we've had a lot of news here the last week or so. We're in for a bumpy ride ahead. So, buckle up is my view.
Yes.
Stay focused on the long-term thesis.
Yeah.
Well, Anthony, it's funny. I love looking at investor sentiment and reminding people about investor sentiment and what's going on. Most of last week was pretty good. People were getting ready to celebrate, talking about all the catalysts.
We had 3 green days: Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Yeah.
Right.
So then Friday was, a horrid bloodbath, and one of I think there was a competitor fund that had some outflows and was selling off to kind of exacerbate things. But and then today's sell-off stuff was headline based. But
I don't think we had
different last Thursday. Everything was different.
I don't think we had that. I don't think we would have had such an aggressive sell-off in the afternoon if that IRS thing didn't come across the table.
Exactly.
either.
I agree with that.
Because, I mean, a lot of people were interpreting that a lot of crazy ways, and I just shut my phone off. And I was like, I'm not even going to respond to any of this. I'm not going to look into it. It looks like an email that you would get, like a marketing email you get from the IRS. That is literally it.
Well, need to ask you guys a favor. One of our writers writes, can we get shad smuggled into the U.S.? I'd be open for that, but until I do that.
Southern border. It's wide open.
Southern border.
Come on right in.
It's true.
Saw a TikTok video on how they're scaling
No
that.
comment.
Wowzers. Before I let you guys go, I do want to bring up this Chevron Defense. Go ahead.
Keep going. I'm just laughing at Anthony. You set me up for that with the southern border.
Did you guys pay much attention to this topic, the Chevron Defense, how it was overturned by the Supreme Court last week? I'm trying to wrap my head around as to there's a lot of moving parts and really trying to truly understand what this overturn means. But maybe if AV, I'll begin with you. But what do you think this announcement means and the effect it probably could have on the cannabis space?
So if you really want to get a good handle on this, I suggest following Shane Pennington and Matt Zorn over at On Drugs. Everything, for the most part, what I'm about to say is stuff that I've read from them and their perspective on it, as they're truly subject matter experts in admin law. So from my understanding, this doing away with the Chevron deference takes the power away from the three-letter agencies that you see in the United States governmental bodies. So the EPA, NIH, HHS, DEA, I'm assuming falls under that purview too. They had very strong power to interpret the laws. Now, stepping outside of the cannabis lens, if you want to talk about the bureaucracy that is the United States right now and regulatory capture, which you could talk about in things like the NIH, the EPA, and how corporate interests have found their way into there, these regulatory bodies really do have way too much power when it comes to interpreting the laws and being able to enact the way that they see the law working for them. So I think this is a net positive for the country as a whole, because I mean, you can go back and look through things that the NIH and the EPA have done that just don't align with the interests of the people. They align with the bureaucracy within them. As it relates to cannabis, the 5-step process that was enacted to get to the rescheduling recommendation, I think that the repealing of the Chevron deference bodes well for that. However, it could potentially have ramifications within the 2-step process that the OLC memo had mentioned. That's the only bearings that I've seen that it has on cannabis. It can take the science and data-based information coming out of those 3-letter agencies and leave it up to black and white legal interpretation via the courts and the legislative process. So it's ambiguous as to how it actually applies to the cannabis industry right now, in a direct sense.
Yeah. Well, I would add it's an important case, I think, for not just cannabis, Americans in general, because it impacts every aspect of business. Just about every business in America has a federal agency that oversees that business and has some rulings out there that are guiding that business. And really and again, not a legal scholar, you should definitely have somebody on, but my understanding of what the court said last week was that it shouldn't be, for cases where there's ambiguity or for laws where there's ambiguity, it should be the courts that should arbitrate what the law is. It shouldn't be an agency saying what the law should be. Now, that is a real difficult and complicated distinction when you look at the Controlled Substances Act, because there's a lot of elements of the CSA where Congress delegated very specific authority to the DEA and the DOJ. And the court came out last week and said in the areas where Congress intended to delegate that authority is not usurped and it sits squarely with those agencies. It's really where there was ambiguity with respect to the legal aspects, where the court can now have more, or in the Supreme Court's opinion, it says the court should have the power to make those legal distinctions, not the actual agencies themselves. So I'm going to step back from making a prediction or any sort of observations on exactly how it impacts rescheduling. But I think for most businesses out there, this is an important case.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, Anthony, that this doesn't completely hamper the agencies. The agencies still have powers to do their job, that they've been enacted with.
Yeah.
What it's doing is curbing their over abuse or use of power. They're not going to be judge, jury, and executioner anymore.
Right.
So
how long was this in place before it was overturned? Like, it was decades, was it not?
This is decades, but also if you look in, and the reason why I'd also mentioned NIH and EPA, if you look into these 3-letter agencies, they're loaded with people from the businesses that they're regulating at the end of the day. I mean, if you look, Neil Gorsuch, Justice Gorsuch's mother was actually in charge of the EPA back in the day and shredded regulation across the board. That was in there. Just an example, she took, I think, the water, the drinking water, like water purification handbook that was about 6 inches thick down to a 1/2 inch as soon as the 3-letter agencies just decided to interpret everything. So, I mean, this is better for the American people that this has been overturned on a if we're looking out long.
Times are changing.
Branches of government a little bit more back into balance again, and curbing the bureaucracy a little.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a bumpy road. Make no mistake about it. While the Supreme Court did say that the previous rulings should stand and that you shouldn't go back and challenge those rulings, what I'm reading from some of the law firms that we follow and some of the briefings they've been putting out over the weekend is that now that agencies know that their formal rulemaking can be subjected to the court's interpretation, now you may get some of these agencies providing guidance, which isn't necessarily subject to the court. And so they'll use industry guidance as a way to try to implement their policy prerogatives or policy priorities, if you will. And then they'll use regulatory action as the hammer to enforce the guidance. So it's not going to totally go away. We're going to have a period here, I think, of at least a few years while we sort out this balance and while everybody figures it out. So, and that's not a cannabis comment. That's just a general industry comment.
Yep. Well, a lot of good information that was done, proper journalism. Marijuana Moment had some good stories regarding the lawsuit here today that was thrown out. Politico is involved in some stuff here today. Our good friend Pablo Zuanich is actually hosting right now a Q&A with Boris Jordan. Listening to Boris on Pablo's space, he couldn't be more bullish pertaining to this specific topic right now. And also Jesse Redmond from Water Tower, they're hosting a space right now with Jason Wild and Brady Cobb. Is that ended? But regardless, we got an all-star lineup. Everybody's doing their work, and we've got all the big players in the space that are offering their opinion in the industry. But these are the conversations I think that a lot of people like to have and like to see and push the narrative forward. But interesting stuff, but it's good to see. That's actually good for the American people and what kind of effect obviously this has in the cannabis space moving forward. But gents, I think that pretty much wraps up here today. But we just lost Dan. He's back. Okay. Anyways, what's on the agenda? July 4th. Before I let you guys go, fireworks.
I'm going to Canada.
He's going to Canada.
I'll be going north of the border for July 4th, of course.
AC, what's on the agenda for this Thursday?
Quiet family day.
Quiet family day. Dan, how about you? You going out and buying your Klay Thompson basketball jersey? Nice little day for you Maverick fans.
I'll do that. I'm going to take in some Texas Rangers baseball, see some fireworks, see a little parade.
Nice.
I might enjoy some hemp beverages as well as some alcohol beverages. I'm going to celebrate it big time. But yes, I'm excited about the Klay Thompson. Thank you.
Oh, I was funny because all my friends yesterday were texting me from the Panthers parade that I didn't go to because there was a tropical storm on Fort Lauderdale Beach. They're like, there's THC beverages everywhere.
Yeah.
All over the parade, all over the beach. They said there are hemp beverages everywhere that you could just see people drinking. It's a great sign.
That's a great sign. Times are changing. AC and Dan, we'll check back with you guys. Dan, probably
Thanks,
next
guys.
Monday, but AC, we'll keep in touch over the course of July. But if you guys haven't done already, make sure to log on to our YouTube channel and check out the Ohio video that me and the two Anthonys put together, because that's set to go live. So if there's key questions that you guys want to know about that market and the potential and some of the companies involved in it, make sure to go to our YouTube channel and check out that podcast that we did. But Anthony and Dan, we'll talk to you guys in a bit. And in the meantime, thanks for joining us here this afternoon.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one. Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Yeah, you guys as well. All right. That was a good little interview.
Yeah, it's nice to get a little panel going every once in a while on the topics.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I saw that too. Good time to sell, but business-wise, the Boston Celtics, that team is up for sale as of this afternoon.
I mean, the group that owns it right now bought it for $380 million, so they're about to make a boatload of money. As I would assume, it's probably going to sell for $5 to $6 billion.
What was the one organization? Oh, what's his name from Michigan that bought the Suns for $4 billion? But yeah, you're talking about
like Ballmer. Didn't Ballmer pay like $5 or $6 billion for the Clippers? I'm pretty sure he did.
I don't know. Matt Ishba, is it Ishba? The guy
Ishba bought the Suns.
Good friends with Jason Rasnick over at Benzenga. But yeah, he's got, I think, the second largest real estate company.
I'm way off. He bought the Clippers for $2 billion.
Yeah, Matt, whatever, I forget how to pronounce his last name, but yeah, $4 billion. So I can't imagine a historic franchise like the Celtics with 18 rings. In
Bobby Kraft step right up and buy another Boston team.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was an interesting day, interesting interview with these guys and just some of the topics. But I think the big thing, like AC was talking about, there's difference between traders and investors. And we are in these summer months. And, you know, I know I kind of put something bold questions out there as far as could this be the biggest Q4? But, you know, outside of that, trying to look at things realistically, there's some really compelling stuff, especially with the stuff that we learned from Don last week. And then in addition to that, just with Ohio going live and the influence it could have on Pennsylvania. And then, like we said, just the conversations that we keep having with our network down in Florida pertaining to Amendment 3. As far as some of your feedback and questions out there and comments, people out there, we will try to get Brady Cobb on just to get some more clarity on what this lawsuit is. We're going to try to obviously get Jason Wild on at some point, either this week or next week, to talk further about this announcement and what are most importantly the next steps. But hope you guys all had some good information that we shared with you today. And most importantly, smash that like button and leave some comments below. And make sure to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter, as we are going to start initiating coverage on Glass House Brands later this week. So if you haven't got a chance to do so, thank you, Ahrens. There's the link, along with the QR code is, well, whatever, Ahrens, we're fine. But yeah, log on to thedalesreport.com, subscribe. And if not, just click on the link here in the description and check out the information later this week pertaining to Glass House Brands. In the meantime, you are gone for a week up to Vancouver, Canada. So safe flights there.
I'll be back in a week or a week and a half.
Yeah. So for all of you viewers out there, Mr. Varrell will be gone and back a week from Friday. So we've got live streams coming up this Wednesday. We'll keep you guys updated on scheduling this week. We may skip Friday's live stream just because a lot of people are going to be off, but we'll be back this Wednesday, next Monday, and next Wednesday. So leave some comments and let us know some guests that we should have on, and I'll reach out to them and make it happen. Meantime, enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Yeah. See everybody soon.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel, because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.